If I told you that one of the most structurally important films in modern blockbuster history was just hastily rewritten in a hotel room by a comedy actor, right? In just 6 weeks, you would probably think I was joking.
I mean, it sounds completely made up.
It really does. Usually when you hear about a massive studio tentpole, the narrative is all about the spectacle.
Right, the well-oiled machine.
Exactly. You expect this incredibly smooth billion-dollar assembly line designed to show, cities falling from the sky. But today, we are exploring a project for this deep dive that completely flips that script.
Totally.
We're taking a look at a comprehensive Wikipedia dossier on the 2015 Marvel Studios film Ant-Man. And our mission today is not just to recap a superhero movie for you.
No, not at all.
We want to really get into the chaotic behind-the-scenes masterclass in creative pivots, the fascinating technical wizardry of macro cinematography, and why smaller stakes sometimes actually make for a better story.
It genuinely functions as, like, the ultimate Hollywood underdog story. It's just disguised as a massive superhero franchise film.
Yeah.
Because the ecosystem of this production was so incredibly fragile. I mean, it came close to collapsing completely on multiple occasions.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand the sheer scale of this near disaster, we have to look at the timeline.
Oh, the timeline is wild.
You probably remember when the original director, Edgar Wright, walked away from Ant-Man in 2014. It was like the biggest scandal in geek media at the time.
Absolutely.
But this project's roots go way, way further back. We are talking about the late 1980s.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Stan Lee actually pitched an Ant-Man movie to New World Pictures back then, but the studio killed it for the most frustratingly ironic reason.
Which is just so funny in hindsight.
Right. Walt Disney Pictures was developing a movie called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and the concepts were just deemed too visually similar.
A fascinating footnote, right?
Yeah.
Especially considering Disney eventually purchased Marvel and, well, released Ant-Man themselves.
Yeah, full circle.
But the modern iteration really kicked off around 2003. Edgar Wright and his writing partner Joe Cornish, they wrote a treatment for Artisan Entertainment.
Wait, 2003?
Yeah, 2003.
That is years before the Marvel Cinematic Universe even officially existed.
Exactly. And by 2006, Wright was officially hired to direct and co-write it. This was part of Marvel's very first slate of independent films.
And Wright was deeply invested, right? Like, he had been a massive fan of the comics since childhood.
A huge fan. He wanted this prologue featuring the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym, in the 60s, followed by a contemporary story where a thief, Scott Lang, gets the suit.
Sort of a Machiavellian team-up vibe.
Right. But as Wright goes off to direct other beloved films, like Scott Pilgrim and The World's End, the studio landscape completely shifts.
Once Iron Man hits.
Iron Man hits, the Avengers reshapes Hollywood, the studio starts building this interconnected web, and Ant-Man just keeps getting pushed back while Wright is working on drafts and test footage.
Which brings us to the tipping point, right? May 2014.
The infamous press release.
The movie is finally scheduled to shoot, the cast is largely in place, and then boom, a joint press release drops saying Edgar Wright is leaving the project due to, quote, differences in their vision of the film.
And it wasn't just him. The majority of his crew walked out in solidarity.
When I read about this mass exodus of the crew and the sources, it honestly sounded like a death sentence for the movie.
It usually is.
Right, because you can't just slap a new director onto someone else's deeply personal passion project and expect it to work. It's like, I don't know, it's like a master chef abandoning their restaurant just weeks before opening night.
Yeah, because the investors wanted to change the menu.
Exactly. It's like replacing the foundation of a house while the walls are already being framed. How does a studio even recover from losing its visionary that late in the game?
Well, what's fascinating here is the fundamental tension between a singular auteur's unique vision and a studio's need for corporate synergy.
Right.
We really have to look at both sides of this objectively. On one hand, many film critics argue that pushing out a distinct voice like Edgar Wright to fit a uniform, studio formula is a dangerous trend.
They've homogenized cinema.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is a completely valid concern. You lose that highly idiosyncratic, rhythmic visual style that Wright is famous for.
Yeah, he has such a specific flavor.
But on the other hand, the studio's mandate was to build a serialized universe. And Wright's version was reportedly very standalone.
Ah, I see it.
Evangeline Lilly, who plays Hope Van Dyne, she later read the revised script and admitted that while Wright's version was incredible, it just wouldn't have fit in the broader universe.
It would have clashed.
Right. It would have broken the suspended disbelief of this massive, cohesive world they had spent billions building.
So, because you obviously can't just scrap years of expensive pre-visualization and set design.
Oh, definitely not.
You have to somehow retrofit the existing structure. So they scramble, they look at several directors, and finally they bring in Peyton Reed,
who had a huge task ahead of him.
Yeah, because the script still needs major structural work to fit into that wider universe blueprint. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, this part is great.
They bring in Adam McKay, a director known primarily for massive, absurd comedy hits like Anchorman.
Right.
And they bring in the star of the film, Paul Rudd, to rewrite the script themselves.
Just think about that.
Yeah.
You have the lead actor, known almost entirely as a comedic performer, stepping up to co-write his own massive action movie just weeks before cameras roll.
It's nuts.
McKay and Rudd holed up in hotel rooms on the East and West Coast for, like, 6 to 8 weeks. They were just grinding out a massive rewrite.
The mechanics of doing that under such a ticking clock are just wild to me. Like, how do they actually salvage it without breaking the genre?
By meticulously protecting the core DNA of what Wright and Cornish built. They kept the specific tropes of the heist genre.
The assembly of the crew, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. The assembly of the crew, the intricate infiltration blueprint, the ticking clock mechanic, all of that stayed. But they wove in crucial threads connecting it to the broader universe.
Right, the MCU connective tissue.
Yeah. They added a flashback sequence with Peggy Carter and Howard Stark to anchor it in the studio's history.
Oh, that's smart.
They wrote in a fight scene at the Avengers headquarters with Anthony Mackie's character, Falcon.
Which is a great scene, by the way.
It really is. And crucially, they introduced the concept of the quantum realm, which takes the narrative into a subatomic space.
And we absolutely cannot overlook Peyton Reed's contribution to that rewrite process either.
No, absolutely not.
Because he realized that in the original comics, Janet Van Dyne the Wasp is a founding member of the Avengers. She's a massive piece of the lore.
Right.
So Reed mandated that the female lead, Hope Van Dyne, and her mother Janet receive much more narrative weight in the movie.
Which was so necessary.
Yeah. The rewrite wasn't just corporate meddling to fit a formula. It actually resulted in genuine structural character enhancement.
And that focus on character depth wasn't just about satisfying script notes. It's literally the only reason they had a cast left.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Evangeline Lilly was actually very reluctant to take the role after Wright left.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. She was going to walk. It was reading that hastily revised script and seeing a much richer, fuller, kick-ass arc for her character that actually convinced her to stay.
That's incredible. And the sheer dedication across the board to making this bizarre premise work is just staggering.
Oh, for sure.
You've got Paul Rudd, our comedy writer savior, taking what he called the Chris Pratt approach to physical training.
Right, the Marvel diet.
Exactly. He eliminated anything fun and fried from his diet for an entire year to build a superhero physique.
I mean, he essentially had to become a believable action star who could physically pull off a heist, right?
Yeah.
While still maintaining that relatable, charming, slightly unsavory, petty crook persona that got him cast in the first place.
Which is a really tough needle to thread.
It requires a very delicate balance of physical presence and comedic timing.
And then you have Corey Stoll playing the villain, Darren Cross, or Yellow Jacket.
Right.
Now, Rudd is wearing a practical physical suit on set, but Stoll is acting in a gray motion capture suit.
Which he wasn't expecting, I bet.
Probably not. But the production realized early on that a physical Yellow Jacket costume was just a logistical nightmare.
Well, the design of the Yellow Jacket suit was so complex. Stoll described the digital suit as feeling like Apple had designed a militaristic battle armor.
Oh, that's a great description.
Right. It had these articulated mechanical arms and rigid plating that would have severely limited his physical performance on set.
He wouldn't have been able to move.
Exactly. By using motion capture, Stoll could focus entirely on the intense sci-fi villainy of the character. He let the visual effects artists build the complex armor around his movements later.
And you contrast that intense villainy with the brilliant comedic grounding of Michael Peña's character, Louis.
Oh, Louis the best.
He steals the movie. Peña actually modeled Luis's vocal style, that specific rapid-fire cadence and aggressively positive outlook on a real-life friend of a friend.
Really? That's hilarious.
Yeah. It injects this incredible indie comedy flavor right into the middle of a massive blockbuster.
It totally does.
But I have to admit, casting Michael Douglas makes zero sense to me on paper.
Oh, I know what you mean.
You have an Oscar-winning dramatic heavyweight in a movie about a guy who rides a flying insect. Was this just like a paycheck gig for a legendary actor?
You know, it might look like that from the outside, but Douglas actually compared it to his role as Liberace in Behind the Candelabra.
Oh, interesting comparison.
He felt that sometimes you just have to shake things up and take on a completely bizarre challenge.
Okay, that makes sense. But structurally, Douglas provides the necessary emotional gravity. Hank Pym is this bitter, brilliant scientist who lost his company and is estranged from his daughter.
He's a very flawed guy. Exactly. He is deeply scared of his own legacy. By casting an actor with Douglas's innate gravitas, the filmmakers grounded the ridiculousness of a shrinking man in very real, painful human emotion.
It's a classic torch-passing story, really.
Yes. Pym anchors the entire narrative so that when Scott Lang is quite literally surfing through a water pipe, you still care about the human beings involved.
But grounding the characters emotionally is one thing. Because the script was now so intensely focused on grounded, intimate human emotion, the visual team realized they couldn't just throw Paul Rudd into a glowing green screen void.
No, the visuals had to match the tone.
Right, they had to ground the visual language too. And this brings up a massive technical hurdle.
The macro stuff.
Yeah. How do you visualize a hero who shrinks to the size of an insect without it looking like a cheesy 1980s family movie?
Well, that was the exact mandate from the production designer, Shepard Frankel. They explicitly wanted to avoid oversized, goofy prop sets.
Like giant plastic blades of grass or massive Lego bricks?
Yeah. Exactly. They didn't want that at all. They wanted a realistic realization of the macro world. So they leaned heavily into actual macro photography.
Which is incredibly difficult to shoot.
Very. They brought in Rebecca Baylor, who is a director of photography with a deep background in commercial tabletop work.
And the cinematographer, Russell Carpenter, talked about how moving the camera became a massive logistical nightmare during those macro shoots.
Oh, the math behind it is crazy.
So what does this all mean for the listener? Like, does shooting actual macro footage make a tangible difference to you as a viewer, or is it just a studio flexing its technical budget?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes the entire psychological impact of the film.
How so?
When you shoot macro, meaning you are capturing extremely close-up images of small subjects, your depth of field shrinks to almost nothing.
Right.
If the camera lens is an inch off the ground, only a millimeter of space might actually be in focus.
That is a tiny margin of error.
Exactly. Furthermore, Carpenter explained that from an ant's perspective, moving the camera just 4 inches is the equivalent of moving it a football field from a human perspective.
Whoa! 4 inches is a football field.
Yeah. If the camera physically vibrates even a fraction of an inch, your subject completely vanishes into a blur.
That sounds like a nightmare to film.
But by putting in that painstaking microscopic effort to capture real textures, real dust, real carpet fibers, real water droplets, it forces you, the audience, to see our mundane, everyday world as a terrifying alien landscape.
It grounds the most fantastical elements of the movie in strict photorealism.
It fundamentally changes how we perceive the environment. And it wasn't just the macro lighting and textures. They actually shot the film in a 1.85 aspect ratio.
Instead of the wider 2.39 you see in almost all massive epics. Okay?
Exactly. Most blockbusters use that very wide letterbox look because it is perfect for sweeping landscapes or massive armies running at each other horizontally.
But Ant-Man isn't moving horizontally.
No, he's vertical. He is plummeting down through cracks in the floorboards or riding a flying ant straight up into the sky.
Right.
By using a 1.85 ratio, which is physically taller on the screen, the cinematographer gives the audience the vertical real estate to actually feel that sheer drop.
It's a brilliant subconscious manipulation of space.
It really is.
And to seamlessly integrate Paul Rudd into that towering macro world, they utilized a centroid facial motion capture setup.
Which is pretty cutting edge.
Yeah, they didn't just film his face and paste it onto a cartoon. They surrounded him with a 5-camera array shooting at 48 frames per second.
Which is double the normal film speed.
Right. Which sounds incredibly complex, but how does that actually translate to the character we see on screen?
Well, that high frame rate captures maximum resolution. It allows the software to build a real-time 3D topographical map of every single muscle twitch in his face.
Oh, wow.
Peyton Reed would literally call out story beats, and Rudd would act them out from a chair.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting there. And that high-density data is what gets grafted onto the CGI body, animated by double negative.
Ah, I see.
It is the exact reason why you can still recognize Paul Rudd's signature comedic timing, even when he is just a digital avatar sprinting across a vinyl record.
The technology is just staggering. And speaking of bleeding-edge visual effects, we have to talk about the 1989 flashback sequence at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, the de-aging.
Yes. Lola VFX de-aged Michael Douglas to look exactly like he did in the late 80s.
And it looked so good.
It did. And they didn't just use a generic computer smoothing filter. They used a physical body double.
An actor named Dax Griffin, right?
Exactly, who had a striking skeletal resemblance to a 40-year-old Douglas. They actually referenced Douglas's real movies from that specific era.
She's how he moved.
Yeah, mapping the way his skin moved and how light hit his face back then to rebuild his features frame by frame.
It was revolutionary compositing at the time, applying that level of digital reconstruction to a legendary actor for an extended, emotionally nuanced dialogue scene.
Where you are staring right into his eyes.
Exactly. It was a massive flex of post-production muscle that really set a new industry standard.
So you take all of this, the decades of delays, the creative divorce, the frantic hotel room rewrites, the macro photography headaches, the bleeding edge de-aging.
It's a lot.
And it all culminates in July 2015. The movie comes out, acting as the final quiet chapter of the studio's Phase 2 slate.
Right.
And it opens to $57.2 million in North America. Now, at the time, that was the second lowest opening for a Marvel film, only ahead of 2008's The Incredible Hulk.
Which naturally had a lot of industry analysts sweating.
Oh, for sure.
After the colossal, record-breaking openings of the Avengers and Iron Man 3, financial columns were genuinely wondering if the superhero bubble was bursting.
Or if audiences simply refused to show up for a quote-unquote small movie.
Right.
But then the word of mouth kicked in. It had incredible staying power at the box office.
Really, hold on.
It went on to gross $519.3 million worldwide, with over $100 million coming from China alone.
Which is a huge success.
It is. And the demographics were completely fascinating. Disney reported that Ant-Man drew the largest share of families, 28%, and women, 32% of any Marvel title up to that point.
It struck a completely different cultural chord.
It really did.
And critics immediately picked up on it, too. Richard Brody, in The New Yorker, called it a neoclassical comedy.
That's high praise.
He directly compared its tone to Alfred Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief.
Yeah.
He praised it for being a deliberately non-bombastic superhero movie.
Yeah.
Kim Newman at Empire Magazine loved how effortlessly it straddled the heist genre, family comedy, and sci-fi action seamlessly.
Which brings up such a stark, fascinating contrast for you to think about.
Yeah.
You look at Avengers, Age of Ultron, which came out just a couple months prior.
Right.
Where a literal European city is ripped out of the earth and dropped from the sky.
The stakes couldn't be higher.
Exactly. And then you have Ant-Man, where the climactic final battle to save the world takes place inside a little girl's bedroom on a plastic Thomas the Tank Engine toy train track.
This raises an important question about what modern audiences actually require from a blockbuster.
What do you mean?
Well, for years, we had been conditioned to believe that the stakes always have to be global or galactic.
The world must be ending.
Exactly. A blue beam of light must be shooting into the sky. But the success of Ant-Man proved that world-ending physical stakes aren't necessary if the emotional stakes are high enough.
Ah, I love that.
At its core, this isn't a movie about saving the universe. It's a movie about a father, Scott Lang, trying desperately to redeem himself so he can simply be allowed in his daughter's life.
Which is so relatable.
And on the parallel track, you have Hank Pym trying to repair his deeply fractured relationship with his daughter.
Yeah, it mirrors it perfectly.
The Thomas the Tank Engine fight is brilliant because it's hilarious, yes, but also because Scott is fighting to protect his child in her own betterment.
Right.
The physical scale is microscopic, but the emotional scale is massive.
It is the ultimate proof that character depth will always trump visual spectacle.
Every single time.
You can render the most expensive CGI city in the world, but if you don't care about the guy inside the suit trying to get back to his kid, the audience is going to check out.
Precisely why the film works. Its success allowed it to perfectly bridge the gap between the monumental, world-breaking events of Age of Ultron and the heavy political fallout in Captain America: Civil War.
All while keeping the audience's focus entirely on intimate, human relationships.
Exactly.
It really is a miracle of a movie when you look at the entire timeline. It survived 30 years of incubation.
The loss of its visionary architect at the 11th hour.
Yeah, and the daunting task of visualizing a completely unfilmable concept without looking like a joke.
Right.
And it did it through intense collaboration under fire, inventive technology, and recognizing that sometimes you have to shrink things down to make a real impact.
But before we wrap up, there is one final, almost unbelievable detail hiding in the margins of this production.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
It perfectly encapsulates how strange the business of Hollywood can be.
I know the exact detail you're talking about, and it is easily my favorite piece of trivia from this entire deep dive.
When Peyton Reed, Adam McKay, and Paul Rudd were doing their massive hotel room rewrite, they knew they wanted a climactic sequence where Ant-Man shrinks past the point of no return.
Right, going subatomic.
Exactly. Now, in the original comic books, this subatomic dimension is famously known as the microverse.
A total staple of comic lore. It's the obvious choice.
But there was a massive logistical roadblock. The legal rights to the specific term microverse were tied up with the Micronauts toy line and a completely different film studio.
Wow.
The corporate lawyers stepped in and said unequivocally, you cannot use that word in this script.
Just imagine being in that hotel room. You are desperately trying to save a multi-million-dollar script from collapsing, and a lawyer calls to tell you that you legally cannot use the actual name of the place your main character needs to go.
It's crazy. So they had to invent a new term from scratch. But rather than just making up a goofy comic book sounding name, the production decided to reach out to a real-life expert.
Which was super smart.
They consulted with Spiros Michaelakis, a quantum physicist and staff researcher at the California Institute of Technology.
A real Caltech physicist.
Yes. They explained the narrative concept of this subatomic dimension to him, and Michaelakis suggested the name quantum realm.
The quantum realm. A concept that goes on to become the absolute foundational linchpin of the entire cinematic universe for the next decade.
Literally.
It becomes the key to time travel in Avengers Endgame.
And it was born purely out of a copyright dispute. But what's truly brilliant is that Michaelakis didn't just give them a cool-sounding name.
What else did he do?
His consultation helped inject elements of real modern quantum physics into the underlying logic of the script.
Think about that for a second. A simple legal workaround for a heist movie about a guy who talks to ants ended up bringing actual theoretical Caltech physics into a Hollywood blockbuster.
So cool.
It completely blurred the line between comic book magic and real-world science. It's like the architect who walked off the skyscraper project, leaving behind a zoning issue, and the new team solves it by accidentally discovering a new law of physics that allows them to build a time machine.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually.
It is just spectacular.
It makes you wonder, as you look across the landscape of modern media, what other massive foundational pieces of pop culture lore exist simply because a lawyer in a boardroom said, you can't use that word.
It's definitely enough to make you look at every blockbuster a little differently. Keep your eyes open, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.